Welcome to Goldboys Live, presented by Pickett Sports Boom Fantasy, breaking down the NBA card. Maybe we'll get into some March Madness. It's a great time of the year. It doesn't feel like March Madness. We've got some snow here on the East Coast, but breaking it all down, it's me and Brian versus the books. Brian, what's going on, man?
I think it's about time that for this Goldboy Live, they just narrowed it down to the two All-Stars, and we can kind of
Yes.
just rip through this, have a good time. Last time we talked, there's been a lot that's changed in the futures market and the overall outlook of the NBA. I think the biggest thing that's probably changed is how we have what seemed like a distant race for MVP now kind of feels a little bit in reach or a little bit closer than people are giving it credit for.
That's exactly where I wanted to start because not only the odds reflect it, and you look at Bet Rivers, Embiid's down to plus 175. I don't know, DraftKings, like he's in the Embiid's in like the $2 range. And I don't know, can you still include Giannis in that race? We'll just keep it at Embiid versus Jokic for now. Not only have the markets affected that, but if you listen to some of these basketball podcasts and Bill Simmons, who's a voter and who has obviously the mainstream basketball podcast,
Yeah.
Zach Lowe is a voter, has a mainstream basketball podcast. Both of them yesterday started their shows or spent big chunks of their shows on this isn't over. There's some sentiment for Embiid. Embiid just hit a buzzer beater. Nuggets with 3 terrible losses in a row. So you tell me, Embiid, what's a good buy price right now? Is it too late at 2 to 1?
It
Would you
might
get
be
in?
it might be too late. I think the best odds I'm seeing is 220. And it's one of those things where I think last week he was in the plus 400, plus 450 range. And I think at that range you can buy and hope something like this happens, which did happen. But once that push happens and you lose like half of that tech, I mean, I haven't beat it at 12 to 1, and I also have him at 18 to 1. So like I'm in a position where I am a little hopeful that maybe he makes this push, but at 2 to 1, it just kind of feels like I
Yeah.
don't know if there's really value because I think there's a chance he makes that late push, kind of like Jokic did last year, where I think the biggest thing is not only did they lose to the Bulls, they had a bad game against the Nets where they kind of collapsed. I think also like they lost the Spurs. I don't know if you saw someone made like this mixtape of Jokic on defense where he kind of just looked like he looked like a rotating door where he was not even like attempting to block shots or he was just kind of letting guys go. I think the defense in those games was kind of
Right.
where the push is happening, where people are seeing like, oh wow, they lost these bad games, but could it like they're bad teams and you're playing down to position. Like, I think it just overall it was a bad look for the Nuggets and his case. Not saying Jokic is out of the race, he's still very much in the lead, but I think it's a lot closer than people thought it would be down the stretch.
And as it gets closer, I wonder if the fact that it would be his 3rd year in a row, if it's, and Zach Lowe talked about this yesterday, if it serves as a tiebreaker, be like, all right, all things being equal, let's not give it to him for the 3rd
Yeah.
straight year. His whole thing, or not his whole thing, but the big part of it for Jokic, the big case for Jokic is they're just running away with the West, dominating. Now that you drop 3 games in a row, Philly's playing well. There's not that much of a difference between the Nuggets and the Sixers in terms of record, net rating, all
Yeah.
that stuff, where it's close enough where, and I don't know how you want to factor in Kendrick Perkins basically calling all the
Yeah.
voters racist. I don't know if voters want to rebel
If they
against that.
if they
I
want
don't
that on
know
their
how to factor.
resume,
I don't know how to factor that in. I really don't. But I do think it's the point where Embiid's live. I just don't know. Like plus 175, is that really bettable? I'm not sure.
yeah, I think the biggest thing you mentioned is the 3 losses. Where right now, what the Nuggets are 46 and 22, Sixers are 45 and 22. So there's a chance where even if it's a 1 seed versus a 3 seed, can you really look at it and say, well, yeah, they're a 3 seed, but they're the same record. Voters might look at that and say, well, you flip their positioning in their conferences, and you have the same exact record, you have the same exact this and that. That
Yep.
it kind of takes away from the 1 seed if you have the record similar to the 3 seed in the other conference.
What price would you need to be? Because I found there was a plus 250 last night and I was driving. I didn't give it out or anything, but I just played a little bit side for myself at plus 250. That's probably the last place I would play it. Is there a price that where you would say, hey, if I had nothing in pocket, I would still buy it at this number?
I would think 250 or 260 or 275. That's
Or
like
240 at DK? Shopping these around.
no, because I do think that there was something to be said because it may not always be the fairest thing, but I mean, if you remember, Embiid was having a crazy good season, and then the end of the year, it just kind of faltered
Yeah.
off a little bit, and it was like a late push. These late pushes go a long way, and
Recency bias. I agree.
yeah, especially when you include a recency bias with a game-winning shot already, a nice win streak, and I mean the Sixers are just playing like I mean taking my bias out of as a Sixers fan because I never like trust them, but I mean they were down 21 to the Blazers and they found a way to come back like that. That's the kind of stuff I think people like value when they're in this recency bias is, you didn't get down and give up. You got down and you came back, hit the game winning shot, and then they get a little bit easier of some games coming up. I think there's a chance that if they get a 2 seed, if they win their division, I think like a 2 seed would be huge in the Embiid camp.
Let's go there because you texted me last night. You said, "Hey, the Sixers are plus 700 at FanDuel to win a
Yeah.
division. Celtics are about to lose a bad game to the Rockets, and the Rockets tried like hell to give it back. It's now down to plus 440. That was going like as the Rockets are hitting free throws, that keeps going from 700 to 600 to 550.
Yeah.
Wake up this morning, it's 440 at plus 440. They both have the same amount of losses. The Celtics and Sixers both have 22 losses. Celtics have 2 more wins. Where would you go? Is it worth a play here plus 440 on Philly to win the division?
Because I actually put it out. I did put it out there that was 700, and I do think it was one of those things where I kind of was like doing the math in my head during the timeout, saying, okay, they're down 12. It's really hard to win this game, and I think it's still a long shot because you got to remember too, division matters in a tiebreaker. Right now, the Celtics do have the tiebreaker, but they do play one more time, and I do think, I mean, one game back does not seem too impossible with how the Celtics are kind of dropping off a little bit. I mean, they're losing some easier games, and the Sixers are coming up big. So I do think there's a value there, but I think it was one of those things where if you can beat the books like we did yesterday, where I got 7-1, you kind of feel smart that it's down to like almost 400 now. But at the end of the day, it still is like a uphill battle. But one game back does not seem like super impossible. Like I think a week ago, it seemed impossible to think that the Philly had any chance.
And of course, we always talk about the loss column because you cannot make up another team's losses. They're dead even in the loss column. You bring up a good point with the tiebreaker. If Philly beats Boston, will that reverse the tiebreaker or will that not affect it?
I believe it would just it would reverse the head to head, but the Celtics still have the division. Like their division record is a lot better.
That's the second tiebreaker. Okay, so Celtics are
Yeah.
gonna have or Boston's gonna have the tiebreaker no matter what. If you look at the Sixers schedule coming up, all right, it's a tough game tomorrow in Cleveland.
And after that, it's what it's
After that, they get a little breather at the Hornets, at the Pacers, home for the Bulls, at the Bulls. Then it gets tougher again at the Warriors, at the Suns, at the Nuggets. So that stretch is tough. Home for the Sixers, home for the Mavericks, home for the Raptors, at the Bucks. Then they are home for the Celtics. Finish up with the Heat and the Hawks. So that's not easy. My guess is when you see the teams basically with dead even records and one team's minus 700, the other's plus 440, that the other team has a much easier schedule. So let's look at the Celtics schedule here.
well, the Celtics have to play the Kings, so that's an automatic loss.
True.
Our
True.
Kings will definitely come through for us.
At T-Wolves, at Blazers, at Jazz, at Kings. Yeah, so they are on the West Coast, and you could say, oh, they could beat this team, they beat that. They just lost to the Rockets, and they haven't played well recently. Then they get a little breather, home versus the Pacers, home versus the Spurs, at the Wizards, at the Bucks, home versus the Jazz, at the Sixers. Then they finish up with Raptors, Hawks. All
And the
definitely
Raptors
an easier
are
schedule for Boston.
yeah,
But
the Raptors games are very intriguing to me though, because I do think that's one where you can maybe get a split with the Raptors because at that
right.
point in the season they're going to be playing likely like with everything they got to try to make a push. So yeah, it's one of those things where I even mentioned it when I put it out, where I said I mean I put a 0.2 units on it to win like 1.4. It's definitely like a spot where I think it can happen. It was great to get it before the loss to the Rockets, but I'm not saying go out there and put big money on it. It's going to happen. I think it's just one of those spots where if you got the value there, it was really nice.
Yeah, I agree. And this is probably like I think Boston will win it, but I think at plus 440, even it's still a decent shot here. And hey, Boston gets an injury, Boston loses a few games. You can always come back on Boston if it gets to like minus 200, minus 300 to make a little money that way. You want to get into the games tonight?
Yeah, I'm more than ready. I just think that there was this is the exciting time to talk about how things are
Yes.
shaping out.
You look at the schedule, some of these teams have like 13 games left. It's like, where did the season go? I think the late All-Star break really kind of throws everybody off.
Yeah, I also think that people are so used to thinking about sports and All-Star breaks as a halfway point, but it was like a 70%
Right.
point this year.
Yeah.
It kind of threw people off, I believe, in how
Yep.
they view the season.
Let's start here. Cavs and Hornets. Cavs are laying 6. These teams played Sunday night. The Cavs won. The Hornets covered. That line was 9 the other night. It's 6 now. Anything for you, Cavs and Hornets?
I almost want to buy the Cavs here because I mean, if you watch that game, it legit looked like the Cavs were going to drop it. They were down 16 at one point, I believe is the max, and they just kind of shut the door. They were down 8 going into the fourth, and they just shut the door on the Cavs on the Hornets. So I kind of like the Cavs here. I mean, they're not as good on the road, obviously, but Oubre's back in, but they're still missing some key guys. Mark Williams is still out, and I like to believe that when a heavy favorite figures it out in the second half for the first of a back-to-back game against a team, I like to believe that they're going to keep that momentum going. But if you were watching, we actually got the news drop before we got on air that Donovan Mitchell's not playing. So that's kind of, I think, where the spread has
Yep.
dipped a lot. But I do think the Cavs are just overall a much better team. So hopefully they figure it out and they can cover here.
Yeah, nothing for me here. The line looks about right. Pistons Wizards. I think we did the show either last Tuesday or last Thursday. These teams played, and we were making fun of the Pistons because they were getting 8 or 9 at home against the Wizards.
Yeah.
And boy, some of these lineups the Pistons are rolling out are just comical. They beat Indiana last night, right, and beat them pretty comfortably, which is a terrible loss.
They won by 20, I think, but it was like 30 at some point. It was a rough game to watch.
My goodness. Wizards are laying 12 against Detroit. Any interest in this game?
So I actually was looking at. I wanted to take a
Pistons
Bradley
money
Beal.
line?
Yeah, no. I actually wanted to take either Bradley Beal's under or look at the Wizards spread. But with Kuzma out, I actually thought Kuzma was going to play because I think sometimes for these teams that need wins that are on the bubble like the Wizards, I think it's like these are the games you want your starters to play just to take care of business and get the easy wins. Like you don't want to pull the Celtics. But with him out, I don't know if I really like much value on either of these sides. If anything, the biggest thing I've been making money on is taking Killian Hayes' unders. So if he plays, I'll probably take his points under. He's just not making baskets, even with the entire team being out.
Plus 520 on the money line?
They probably win. I mean, the only thing that scares me is the fact that, I mean, not that it really matters, but the Wizards are at a point where they're looking in for this play-in tournament. They literally they can't afford any losses. Like they need to actually step up and win. They played the Sixers, and I was like, had that same thought though, where I was like, oh, the Sixers gonna win, but that 7 is kind of tempting because they need to scrap for this game, and then they came out and lost by like 30. So I don't know if I have any trust on either of these teams to cover any of my money.
Well, I bet if you just take some of these big underdogs on the money line this late in the year, you get so many crazy results with teams just sort of out of it, playing out the string. And I know the Wizards are still in it, but man, you just get some crazy results this time of year.
The Rockets had to be what, 600 yesterday, 650?
Had to be. Absolutely had to be. What was the spread on that? I forgot.
I think it was 13 and 14 and a half. It was like 14, I think.
Which I feel like you should get more than plus 600 or 700, but still.
I think that's my biggest issue was whenever I see people be like, oh, I won this. And I look at the ticket, I'm like, that's cool. But then I think about it and I'm like, you're telling me I get 5-1 odds for the Pistons, you know, for the Pistons to win tonight. Like it seems so like ridiculous. And then it happened. You're like, oh, I guess it makes sense, but it just doesn't seem worth it sometimes.
Right. Right. And you could always look at it like, hey, they get a 10 or 12 point lead or something in the first quarter. Then that goes down to like where it's a 3 or 4 point line and you could hedge and make your money that way.
First quarter spreads. That's what it is. That's what I've been taking. I took it for the Rockets. I took it for most teams that like shouldn't be covering, but I think first quarter is where it's at because that's when you get them. I mean, even the Hornets the other day against the Cavaliers, they were up, I think 16 after the end of the first quarter. They went up big. So I think that's where the value is.
And sometimes DraftKings does these boosts where they pay out your bet if your team gets a 10-point lead. That's a good chance to take the underdog because hey, you get up by anyone can get up by 10. There's just so many swings in these NBA games. But an interesting game. We mentioned the Nuggets. They've lost 3 in a row. This is sort of a quasi big game for them, just to sort of get back on track. 3 terrible losses in a row, really bad losses. Had a lead against the Nets the other day. Just teams they should be beating at home. Now they're on the road against a hungry Toronto team. This is not an easy game to bounce back. Do you think they do bounce back here?
Honestly, this is a game I'm not going to bet, but I'm going to even if I'll have other wagers in play on other games, and I probably will opt to watch this one on my main TV because I think this is such a big game, especially if you are a guy like me rooting for Joel MVP tickets. But yeah, this is a game where I don't like the Raptors because they're always such a mixed bag, but any team with Nick Nurse and how they play defensively, I kind of never count them out in any game just because they play basketball in a way that can kind of squeak out wins. And if you remember, they were up 10 to the Nuggets in the fourth quarter last time they played, and the Nuggets made that big comeback. So if they can close out this game, I do think they have a chance to win. I wouldn't touch it at even money. I mean, the spread's a pick 'em. If they were like dogs by 2 or 3 points, I probably would be interested in getting them at plus money. But as a pick 'em, I just don't see it happening. for me personally. Not saying they won't win, just for me betting it. I would need like a 2.5 spread.
I would, yeah, I would lean towards the Nuggets here just because the urgency of the situation. And again, it's not like they're in any danger of falling out of the one seed. You just want to feel better about yourself
Yeah,
and sort of stop the bleeding. So maybe the Nuggets on a first quarter, you think they get your best performance. The Raptors offense is just dreadful to watch. They can't
it's
shoot.
awful.
They're relying on turnovers. They're relying on offensive rebounds. They just try to win the possession game, but man, they are awful to watch in the half court offense. So I might end up with a bet here on Denver. First quarter, first half, maybe just the full game. I'll probably end up betting
What
Denver in some
What are your
capacity.
thoughts on the 227.5 of the game for two teams that kind of rely on half court offenses?
You think it's a little too high?
I feel like it could be a little tough because like the Raptors, I guess, I mean, as you mentioned, terrible offensively, but I also feel like these are both teams where if it's a closer game, they don't like to push pace in close games.
Right.
Like as long as it stays close, the only thing that sucks for unders, if you take whole game unders, if you see like a game kind of turning into like a 9-10 point game where you see the pace really kind of picking up. But if it stays close, I do think
Right.
227.5 is kind of a fun look.
Yeah. It's never a lot of fun sitting there betting unders on NBA games, man. That's a rough way to spend 2.5, 3 hours. But hey, it's what you got to do sometimes. Gold Boys Live, Picket Sports, Boom Fantasy. Check them out. A fun game. The Thunder, everyone kind of assumes they're tanking. SGA's out, but they've won enough games here. I don't know what they're doing, honestly. If they were tanking, they're not going all in on the tank. The
Yeah.
Nets, who look like they could miss the playoffs like a week or two ago, they won in Boston, they won in Denver. They've played really well here. Bridges is emerging to like a star, mini star. Just the way he scores is so fun to watch. This is a fun game. I would lean towards OKC. I sort of like both these teams, so I don't know how to bet it. What's your thoughts here? Brooklyn and
Yeah.
OKC, a high total here, 233.5.
Yeah. And SGA is in this game, which is
Yeah.
funny because whenever he's in, I see his line listed at 31.5. My first thought is I want to go under because they're tanking this and that. And then he plays 36 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I haven't taken it yet, but I used to be like, oh, I gotta have to give that a look. But now I'm just not too sure. I do think this is like, you give the edge to OKC just because they're at home. I would love to back the Nets at plus money because how well they've been playing. But as you mentioned, this is not an OKC Thunder team that seems to understand they're supposed to be tanking. So, some of these teams you try to buy because you think, oh, they're going to tank. It's not even going to be close. But then they're playing good basketball too. So this is a spot where the one bet I was looking at is I know you like Mikal Bridges a lot. I kind of was looking to take Cam Johnson's under in this game. He's at 16.5 in his last 4 games. His field goal volume is like dropped. It's kind of become like a Mikal Bridges show for
Right.
the Nets. So I
What do we
think
have here? 25.5 for Bridges. Boy,
yeah.
I don't think I'd go under.
Yeah, I wouldn't. So that's the thing is I like Bridges, but I don't know if I can touch over 25.5. It seems kind of like a nice line. So I was pivoting to an under from maybe Cam Johnson, who's only taken 19 shots in his last 2 games combined.
How about over 2.5 threes for Bridges? It used to be 1.5 every night. It was like free
Yeah,
money, except for like one night out of however many he's been with the Nets. Now at 2.5, but you get plus money. Is that something you look at?
I think it's one you can look at too because I think he draws a decent matchup because I think like OKC's a weird team because they actually stack up decently well and like defensive efficiency, but they just play fast pace. There's gonna be more possessions here for Bridges. I think he should, as long as he takes the threes. You mentioned that one time he just took two all game and kind of pissed you off. But if he has the volume, he should have a great game tonight.
Made one right away too. I was like 3 or 4 minutes in the game. All he needed was one the rest of the game. It just never came. I only shot one. And he shot a lot since he should. When you shoot that well from three, you should not be shooting two a game. Your volume
Yeah,
should be 7, 8, 9 because he's very efficient too from two, from three, from the foul line. But when you're shooting that well from three, you should be taking a bunch of them. This one jumps out at me. SGA over a half, minus 140. Does he just
yeah.
not shoot any? I don't focus on his 3-point props a lot. Is that a sucker bet?
It could be. He's one of those guys where he can score at so many different levels that I don't. He like that's the kind of people. Like, look at guys like Bradley Beal, where sometimes people see like the 1.5 threes lines and they think, oh, how does he not hit 2 threes? But some guys score so well inside and in the mid range. They don't even rely on that. I'm checking right now. Yeah, last game SGA didn't even shoot a three.
Wow.
He scored 35 points, didn't attempt a three.
Wow. Boy, if he can ever incorporate that and add that to his game, he's so hard to stay in front of already. If you have to respect the 3-pointer, He would be
Yeah.
impossible to guard. Any of these other, while we got him pulled up, Cam Johnson over 2.5 threes, Finney Smith over 1.5, Dinwiddie over 2.5. Any of these jump out to you?
I think Dinwiddie at plus money could be a good look for if you
Yeah,
look at the by the threes. I honestly I could be wrong with Cam Johnson, but if he kind of has faded a little bit. He started so hot with the Nets, and his field goal volume has kind of dropped a little bit. So I think with Dinwiddie back, it could be a time for him and Bridges to have a nice 2-man game.
right. And nothing. You'd lean OKC on this game.
Yeah, like I said, I would love to buy the Nets at plus money if I believe the Thunder were actually going to tank, but they've proven to not really. They've
No, they're not
proven
in.
they've proven to tank, but not tank, and it's just super
They got one
strange.
foot in, one foot out. It's weird.
Which is not how you can. That's like
No,
the worst way to do
it's
it.
not tanking. If you're doing that, you're
Yeah,
not tanking. It's strange. It is strange. But look, I mean, the play would be more fun if they're in it because that's a talented team. They're a fun team to watch. And like you mentioned, they don't seem to know, hey, you're supposed to be losing these games. So interesting. Another team, two teams really in the play-in mix. The Lakers are laying a point in New Orleans. Anthony Davis revenge game here. Well, not really revenge. Like it's probably more of a Pelicans revenge game.
yeah.
Lakers have played well defensively this last, since they made these trades this last 2 or 3 weeks. Tough loss against the Knicks the other night. These are games you need to have. You need to win these coin flip games. If you're the Lakers, probably headed for a play-in at some point here, whether it's 7 through 10, who knows, because they're all bunched up. But how do you look at Lakers Pelicans?
I hate to say this, but I probably would lean the Lakers, and that pains me to say, because tough loss. But like you mentioned, you hate to have that mentality when you're betting on teams that say like, oh, they can't afford this or they have to do that. But sometimes for teams like Lakers, like they have more to play for than some of the other teams that quote unquote need this. Because the Lakers are the Lakers, like they're just a team that have so much pedigree, they have so much talent, like perceivable talent, and they made so many big moves where Anthony Davis has kind of stepped up and kind of has given them this push. And you talk about revenge game, it's not really a revenge game for him, but he does seem to play up against certain teams. Like when he plays the Pelicans and some other matchups, he does seem to kind of maybe circle on his calendar and kind of come out a little bit more aggressive. But he's been killing the offensive rebounds as well. I think he had 5 or 6 against the Knicks, and that's a big thing for the Lakers because a team like that takes so many high volume shots that aren't necessarily the best look, those second chance opportunities are going to be big for them. And I think this is a matchup where they can get the second hand opportunities.
Yep, absolutely. And this is an important game for the Lakers. You need every one of these you can get. I don't know when you're getting LeBron back, but if he can just hold your water and somehow, I know we've been saying this for it seems like years now, if you could just somehow be healthy in the playoffs, they're tough, but I just don't know if that's ever going to be a reality. So I would lean towards the Lakers here.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know if you watched the Lakers game against the Knicks, but it kind of pissed me off. They were down, I think they were down what 3 or 4. They were down 4, and they allowed 20 seconds. They allowed I think 15 or 16 seconds off the clock before fouling.
yep,
They were
stupid.
trying.
I hate when
They were
teams do that.
they were trying to trap down 2 possessions, and I'm like, it's trap and foul. They literally they got the foul with 5 seconds left. They were down 3. That's what it was. There was no time. There was 20 seconds left, and they foul with 5 seconds left. And I'm like, you're down. I know you. In an ideal world, you get a steal, a slam. It's a tie game. Holy shit, we tied it up. But you got to play the foul game there, and it was just terrible late game management. Where I was shocked they allowed the Knicks just to dribble down that clock so much.
So stupid. Yep, totally agree. Boy, the Spurs and the Magic. The Spurs are getting 5 at home. Imagine the Magic laying 5 on the road to anybody. They've been feisty, they've been good, but the Spurs have actually won a few games recently. They had a nice win against Denver the other night. They've been a little scrappier than you might expect. Would you lay the 5 with Orlando here?
Surprising, I think I would. I think
I
I was talking about this yesterday with my brother because we were watching the Rockets game, and as weird as it sounds, I think teams that are tanking you almost have a better shot taking them against good teams and bad teams because there's something to say for a young core like the Rockets to say, hey, we just beat Jason Tatum and the Celtics. Like, think about this next year. But like, what's beating this team gonna like really show for the Spurs? It's one of those things where Spurs beat the Nuggets. Great for morale. Great for like, oh, look, next year, guys, when we put in these pieces, like, we're going to be this talented, this and that. But the games you quote unquote have to lose, this is probably one of them where I don't think they're going to really have much to play for here. So 5.5 is only 2 possessions. I would probably lay it with the Magic.
Yep, and there's a 5 at DraftKings, total 232.5. Any of these props catch your eye? Any player props? Anything?
I'm not sure your thoughts on this, but Zach Collins had a great game, like I think last game, but his
Phil Collins or Zach Collins?
Zach Collins,
Okay.
he I actually was looking at his under 14 and a half points, but he scored the 23 last game, but I'm not convinced he's actually like a good NBA talent. I don't know. I think he's just one of those guys where he gets into early foul trouble if guys are aggressive, and they're playing a team with like Wendell Carter, where I feel like he could struggle on the defensive end. Oh my goodness, we're getting the classic underdog tweets. Ivy's out, and so is Bagley. So we probably
Wow.
should have laid. This is
So we
good. We
should
waited.
go
Now
bigger on
we should take
Detroit
the
money line.
Pistons.
Yes.
Yeah, now it's gonna get plus 600. Now we're good. But yeah, that's the only prop I had. Circle for the Spurs game is I like taking Spurs unders on games where I think they might just punt and not really take it too seriously.
Wendell Carter plus 105 double double. Boncaro plus 370 double double.
I think either of those are great looks because the Spurs like to play fast and they love to miss baskets. So
It's a good combination.
it's a good combination if you look at rebounds. I do think the Wendell Carter, what's his double double in a win? Plus 170.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's not terrible.
I think that well, Corey Joseph's also out. Oh, this is gonna be horrible.
That's
Corey
not
jo-
horrible.
Alec Burks is also out. Who are they gonna play? See, the Pistons are playing. You talk about like all the jokes, but like, oh, they played plumbers back then. The Pistons roster is becoming a team of plumbers right
It's
now.
crazy.
They
It's
have no one
unbelievable.
active.
I'm gonna be fascinated. I'm gonna actually turn that game on just to see who's playing and who are the backups to the backups to the backups. Like there's gonna be some remember it was a couple years ago, it might have been last year during COVID where they had to like sign former NBA players just for like 10-day deals, and these guys would bounce around team to
Yeah,
team like Joe Johnson. That's sort of what it's come to with Detroit here. It's just crazy.
that's that one meme where it's like the create a player on NBA. That
Yes.
one guy was like playing the summer league, and I was just, who is this guy? Yeah, I
Yep.
was actually flipping between games, and I made a joke that I had to put the Pistons game on because I bet on Buddy Bohem or Bohem,
Well,
some
it's
guy the
Boeheim. It's
Lakers.
Boeheim's kid.
Boeheim, yeah, it's Boeheim, yeah. And I made a joke that I was like, yeah, like I took his props. My brother is not legal enough to bet on sports yet, but he was like, there's no way they even offer lines for this guy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just screwing around. Like, there's just no one on this team.
It's funny. I was actually looking him up the other day because they were mentioning Boeheim's last game, and I was like, his kid's not on the team anymore. Did he get picked up on an NBA team? And you're right, he's on the Pistons.
Yeah,
Looking
I
at
didn't realize that
Boncaro,
until yesterday.
yeah, Boncaro had 10 rebounds last game, but before that, 8, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he flirts with it. I don't know. Plus 370, is that worth enough to make a play?
I think I think it's one of those things where if he's close enough, he can like quote unquote chase it. That makes sense. Like if he has like 8 in a blowout, sometimes these guys go a little bit more aggressive on the
Right.
boards before getting pulled because that double double mark's kind of cool to have.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm going to pull the trigger on Boncaro here plus the 370. Carter's a safer play. I feel like Carter will get it. I want to be a little greedy here and go for the bigger payout. Let's see. We can move on here. Knicks and the Blazers. Knicks laying 2.5. They got a big win in OA to stop the bleeding. They have not played as well without Brunson. They've hit a little bit of a skid, but again, nice win the other night. Portland got destroyed by the Pelicans Sunday night. Knicks laying 2.5. What are your thoughts here? Knicks Blazers.
Yeah, the Knicks without Brunson is like kind of a scary team to back. But yeah, RJ Barrett's weirdly enough been playing better, which I kind of am one of the heads of the RJ Barrett like non fan club. I hate watching RJ Barrett play.
Me
He's just
too.
one. I just like this sounds bad, but like I know there's a market for him, but these guys that are high volume, inefficient scorers, just it's just not my like my cup of tea if I'm looking for a guy to build around or like even to pay big money to. But Josh Hart has been so fun to watch on that team. I haven't seen the injury report. I don't think he's on there, but I think this is could be one of those quote unquote not revenge spots, but if he is in the game, Josh Hart should want to play up to the Blazers, you would believe, right?
Is there going to be a Josh Hart tribute video before the game?
I don't know. Matisse Thybulle got one when I was at the Sixers game on Friday.
No, he
So
didn't. Did he
yeah,
really?
he
Oh
did.
my god.
And so there probably will be one. Philadelphia loved Tease though, and I liked him too, but we weren't going to pay him. I was okay with the trade, but yeah, he hit a three and he got cheers. So it was a weird. So if they offer Josh Hart props, I think that would be a fun thing to take. I don't usually
You
take
said
narrative plays, but I think Josh Hart's one of those guys. Take his rebounds because he had 8 offensive rebounds, I think, against our Kings. Check the math on that. I think he had 8 offensive rebounds against the
over
Kings.
6.5 rebounds.
I would take that for Josh
You
Hart.
would?
I think he's a hustle guy. He's a hustle guy, and as long as Brunson's out, who's day to day, but I mean they have Julius Randle listed at like 30 and a half or 29.5 points, which kind of makes me think that Brunson's not going to play. I always think they kind of know something there if they're setting the line that high.
Right.
But yeah, I would take Josh Hart's rebounds. I think he's so good in the offensive glass, and rebounds is such a hustle stat where he should be amped up tonight to get some boards.
Over 10.5 points.
That also requires him to get the ball. That's a whole other thing.
Right.
Yeah, but
Let's
Josh
see.
Hart's a
How
fun
about
guy
him
to
for a
watch.
double double? Let me check him for a double double. We want to get freaky here. Goldboys live, Picket Sports, Boom Fantasy. What is it? What is it under here? Game props?
Yeah, wait, what's the odds on a 6.5 rebounds? Let me check that.
Minus 135. Nothing crazy.
I would still, yeah, I mean, look at his last game logs though. 7, 8, 8, 15, 8, 8.
Yeah, I'm not seeing double double yet for this game. Maybe because it's the uncertainty with Brunson.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll text you. If Brunson's out, I probably will look for a double double look for him for like a free bet or something because I think
Yeah.
that's a good look.
What odds would you expect on that?
If his you would think probably what like
3 to 1.
350
Yeah.
for yeah about if you're thinking 10 and a half and 6.5 I would think about like 350 300.
Oh, we just moved the number. It's minus 145.
Wow, it's because of all six people in the chat right now are moving the market right here.
Right. That's good. That's good. Let's see. Anything else on that game?
No, I didn't. The only thing I had looked circled was Josh Hart props, but I will probably wait until I hear about Brunson, which could lose value, but his minutes aren't the same with Brunson.
No, I totally agree. And I agree with you that heart rebound prop is a go for me. So I like that one up. I think I'll add that one. Let's see. Is this the last game of the night? I think it is. The
Yep.
Suns off a back-to-back. They got destroyed in the first quarter by the Warriors. They crawled back in the game, typical NBA, before they ended up losing. Clay absolutely went crazy, as he's known to do. Milwaukee, second night of back-to-back, too. They crawled their way back to beat our Kings. Game they were down 9 or so at the half and ended up winning the game. Bucks laying 1.5. I would probably look towards the Bucks. Do we know if Giannis is playing tonight? What are your thoughts here, Bucks and
So
Suns?
it's funny that I actually the only thing I took in this game was I took my classic DeAndre Ayton over in points because I love that look, but also only 1 point spread. Giannis is not on the injury report, but in a back to back after he's been so weird with his playing time, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes from no designation to out just like that. Like I don't think that would be a surprise at all if he sits in a back to back here. I honestly thought he was going to sit yesterday and
Right.
then play today, but the fact that he played one already makes me kind of think that I wouldn't be shocked if he sits in this game, especially because the Bucks won yesterday. I think the NBA now, especially when you have as much as a lead as they do, I think in the NBA now you kind of view splits and back to backs as a win. You know, as long as you win one of them, you count it as a decent thing for your team.
You play the Suns now expecting Giannis to sit, or we think the Suns maybe sit people too. So you know what? We're not catching anyone for the division. We're second night of a back-to-back. Maybe we give Paul or somebody the night off, although
I think Paul is the only guy that you would
yeah.
consider resting. I mean,
Booker's had the injury. Do you really want? I don't know. I'm just
yeah.
talking out
Booker,
loud.
Booker and Aiton have kind of been nice on back to backs as well, but Chris Paul is just not the guy on back to backs you want to
No,
trust. So maybe he
no.
sits, but I don't think the Suns will sit people because I still think they know that they're in reach of the certain like of the division still in a way, and they don't want to keep sliding. I don't think we'll start seeing teams bench players
Or do they want to?
intentionally.
Or do they want to keep sliding to the 6 to avoid
That
Denver round 1 and say, hey, for the 6, maybe we can get Memphis or Sacramento in round 1, which is better than maybe Golden State. Again, it's a lot of moving parts. So you can't really pick your opponent, but I do think Denver in the 1 is the harder bracket than Memphis, Sacramento in the 2-3.
Yeah, I think that's gonna definitely become a thing, but it might be too early to start thinking about that because like you don't know who's just cemented yet. It's a very weird time in the NBA where you don't want to guess wrong because you don't necessarily
Right.
know how things are gonna shape up. Like the last 3 or 4 games, you start seeing teams just absolutely not even hide the fact they're tanking for better positioning. But this early on, I'm not sure if we'll see that.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but it's something to like, look, there's 13, the Suns have 13 games left. It's amazing. Some of these teams, like we just said, where's the time go? But I do think that'll be something to watch. You can't do it yet, but the last week or so, I think all things being equal, you'd rather be in the Suns You'd rather be in the 2-3 part of the bracket with the Grizzlies, the Kings, than have to deal with
Yeah.
the Nuggets in the 1 and having to play them in the second round. Like if you're the Suns, if you let's just say you get the 4 seed, you got to play maybe Golden State is the 5 in round 1, and then the Nuggets round 2 just to get to a conference finals. That's definitely tougher than Memphis,
Yeah.
Sacramento,
And
whoever.
Memphis, I mentioned it earlier, but Ja Morant might not come back this year. I
Right.
mean, the more you see with this stuff, like he might just. It's tough to think he wouldn't come back for the playoffs, but I mean, right now it's trending to he just might not see the court.
All right, quick recap. I jumped in Boncaro plus 370 double. I took Hart over 6.5 rebounds, and I'm leaning towards taking the Nuggets, but I didn't fire on it yet. But that would be a way I would go. Anything for you that you want to give out?
The one thing I already put out was DeAndre Ayton over 17.5 points without KD. I think it's a good look there. I am looking to fade Cam Johnson, and it's mostly just the love where I'd like the spot a lot for Mikal Bridges and for Dinwiddie. If you don't like unders, like to take overs. But that's the 2 spots I have circled right now. But I'm gonna wait for some injury news to bet some other spots. So that's the blessing and a curse with the 1 o'clock show is you get some good nuggets out there, but you don't necessarily have all the information available.
Brian, it was a pleasure, man. This was fun. Quick little show. We got you some information. So thank you. Thank you to Goldboys, Pickett Sports, Boom Fantasy. Enjoy all the game, guys. Good luck with all your plays, and we'll see you next time.